You've literally joined as the countdown went to zero. Welcome.
That's it. Yeah. Thanks very much, Guy, for having me on. How are you?
No, we're good. We're good, and thank you so much for joining Bits, Bytes, and Banter. We changed it from a podcast format to a more spontaneous live streaming platform. Hence the reason why, the saying, we should never work with kids, animals, and live platforms. Well, we can definitely add the third one to it. But we're here now. We thank you for joining us, and we hope we're going to have a good chat. How are you keeping?
I'm good, thank you. Yeah, had a nice Christmas break with the family and was back into work last week. So all good. How about yourself?
Once Santa arrives, all is good. Everything else trickles down. It's all relative. But my kids now are of the age where they've worked out that if they still believe in Santa, even at 20, they get two bumper presents, you see. One from Santa and one from mum and dad. So you better be careful. And when they start thinking about that Santa maybe not actually the guy that comes down the chimney.
Does that apply for people going to the host events as well?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
We still believe.
You can believe all you want, but it's not going to happen. So I thought we'd have a bit of a chat. You obviously have had quite a transition, quite a change, and the word being change over the last 5 years, let's say. And you obviously achieved such fantastic levels of achievement when you were playing rugby. And I just wanted to get an insight, and maybe for our listeners, get some sort of an insight into sort of what that change means, and going from professional rugby with the disciplines to a professional digital infrastructure space. I think it will be really interesting to understand what's consistent, what's the same, what's transferable, and what you have to just put on the shelf and say it's of no relevance whatsoever. So for those listening, we tend to have a quite a global audience, Fergus. So we may even have people on here that don't know what rugby is. So the floor is yours.
Yeah, I think to give people a background that are listening that aren't aware of professional rugby. I played professional rugby with a team called Leinster, which kind of represents 12 counties in the east of Ireland. I played for the province for 13 years. Was lucky enough to win a number of 4 European Cup titles with them and six league trophies with them. So I was in some really high performing teams during that time with some really high performing people. And I also was lucky enough to represent my country 34 times. Played at the Rugby World Cup in 2011 in New Zealand. We won Six Nations in 2014 with Ireland, and a Grand Slam in the Six Nations with Ireland in 2018. So I think my timing was very lucky in the professional area, where I managed to hang around for long enough with a lot of good players and to pick up a couple of medals myself. But since that career has passed, I retired from professional rugby in 2020 during COVID-19, and I had interviewed with Kirby Group Engineering in the March of 2020 before the COVID kind of first lockdown. And thankfully I'd secured a job with them. So I started with them in November 2020, and I've been with them since, working in sales with business development under Aidan Kearns. He's one of the directors with the company. So huge change during that period for me. One of the years was kind of wiped out via COVID, kind of was wiped out for everyone, obviously corporately and in the sporting world as well. So that was a challenge for me because I was coming into a new space, learning about selling engineering services from my home. I wasn't meeting work colleagues. I wasn't meeting people within the industry. And I suppose it's only since I've had exposure to the likes of yourselves, Gary, host, and just how important these platforms are within an industry like construction, where a lot of business is done and conducted around relationships and building those relationships, trusted relationships around delivery and transparency, and that's really only done properly when it's you get that face to face. So having that back in the last year has definitely been a positive thing for me anyway.
And when you look, even you said a professional rugby player for 13 years, but even before that, I'm sure you were head, neck, and ears in rugby in school and the discipline of it. And you've seen a lot of players who were hugely talented, I'm sure, but just couldn't apply themselves. And it's the same in all walks of life, isn't it? And maybe if I could step back and ask you an honest question, but at 16 and 17, were you the best player? And did you look like you were going to be that professional rugby player, or was it more to do with application?
I think it was probably a combination of a few of those things. I don't think under coaches I had when I was younger, I maybe a couple of them might have thought I would have gone on and got opportunities professionally, but a number of them might have not. I wouldn't have necessarily completely stood out. But I suppose I loved team sports growing up. I played a lot of Gaelic football, and it just so happened I went to through a schooling system where rugby was the dominant game, and that kind of took over from there. My father was always involved in rugby clubs and played himself, so that became a love of mine, and I kind of took to it. I love the kind of team element again around people and trust and honesty, and I kind of got picked up in the Leinster system. Then I got slipstreamed into the academy system in Leinster, and I kind of took my chance from there. But it was more around like my path was more carved out through hard work and discipline, to be honest. I was never the fastest, never the biggest, never the strongest. I probably had to punch kind of above my weight and work very hard and keep getting up when things didn't work out. So that was probably how it kind of panned out for me, I'd say.
I guess there are a lot of the same disciplines that apply to younger listeners who are in college maybe, or are looking at a career, and they're looking around the room and they're seeing that some others are more intelligent or they seem to be sharper. I think as what we've all learned, and you've demonstrated it there are very few that are born anything, born brilliant, born leaders, born the best rugby players in the world. You may have played with one of those, Brian O'Driscoll and that ilk, but even when you listen to their discussions, they weren't standouts. In fact, some of them didn't even make teams. It's about applying yourself, isn't it? Really getting into the team spirit, I guess, and then applying yourself and getting, if I listen, a sense of purpose, a collective purpose. Is that what the difference was really when you went into the professional era? What was the difference in your opinion, and why did it work for you?
The difference going to the professional era from probably amateur rugby was there's a number of them, I suppose. There's a high performance kind of environment you're obviously in 24/7, which you don't have the amateur level. I'm currently doing a bit of coaching on the side with Wanderers Rugby Club, for instance. They train with the AIL, which is the All Ireland League in Ireland, and they train, just to give people a background. They train twice a week, on a Tuesday night and a Thursday night, and they play. And it's amateur rugby. They play at the weekend, so they have their day job, and then that's their hobby. And I suppose the difference is when you're in the professional environment is you live and breathe it. It's your Monday to Friday is training, preparing, recovering, and then getting picked and maybe playing at the weekend. So it's your life, and you're in a bubble. I think you're kind of in a bubble in professional rugby for sure within this country, because you're just on a completely different routine. And I think that you got a small window to make the most out of it, in terms of what you can achieve and how far you can go. And I feel very lucky that I kind of got the window I did, because I came through with plenty of younger talented guys that happened to not make it through injury. They might have had a couple of guys had career threatening injuries or had to finish their careers early through injury, and I feel very lucky to have kind of come out the other side and still be in one piece. So that's a large part of it as well, is being durable.
And obviously, it's been said many times in many sports that the hard work goes on outside of the glare of the people who see you scoring a try. It's on those dirty Tuesday and Thursday and Monday and Friday nights, or days now as they were. But I have to ask you, because all of us, when we were kids, wanted to score a try, hit a winning goal in the All-Ireland, or hit the winner for the FA Cup final, whatever. Yeah. What does it feel like, genuinely, when you're in the tunnel about to run out to play the All Blacks? Are you so in the zone, or are you sort of pinching yourself? What's going on? Have you just prepared so well that now you're just going out to execute, or are you really living the moment? I'd love to know that.
It's just like securing a new project for Kirby Group, Gary,
Okay, all right. Well, let's assume Aiden's not listening, and you're there.
Yeah, no, it's kind of it's very hard to describe, because I suppose, as you say there, a lot of youngsters out there, boys and girls, will, as you say, dream big when, they're playing in their back gardens or with their mates, and they do visualize themselves scoring that, goal in the All-Ireland final or something great like that. And I was lucky enough to be involved in some great days, and they're some of my fondest memories. And I was lucky enough to go through a rugby system with guys that I knew very well from my teenage years, and we happened to break into the professional setup together. So some of those memories are amazing. To put it into words, what it feels like to kind of score a try in the Aviva Stadium in front of a packed Aviva, or winning those trophies, it's kind of very hard to describe, really, Gary. Huge sense of achievement. I mean, the reason I loved team sport really was because there was a huge accountability piece, for the people around you, when you didn't do the right thing, or you weren't working hard enough. And I kind of loved that. So I think when you achieved great things and we managed to win trophies, it just made it even more rewarding, really.
So I could only imagine. I mean, the whole physical aspect of the endorphins and the serotonin and all that just releases, and the adrenaline, I guess, is something. And I have to ask you, because I've read many biographies of people who have had their name chanted, more soccer to be fair, chanted from the high terraces on a Sunday with 65,000 people, and tomorrow they retire. And it's hard. It's hard to find that adrenaline. You become an adrenaline junkie. Some of them often said that was the buzz and stuff. Do you believe that the sport has helped you? And I know that in Ireland they have psychologists and coaches and all the rest of it. Are you nearly, when you realize, because you can't last forever, are you preparing long in advance for that day when your name isn't on the sheet?
You are, actually, and I think it depends on your mindset. I think that professional rugby players in Ireland, there's a really great supporting function called the Rugby Players Ireland Association, which is called the RPI, and they help players kind of further educate themselves outside of playing the game professionally, around making sure people are finishing up their college courses, or they're getting internships, or doing work experience stints, or even just being involved in communities and helping out. And did a number of things with some of the children's hospital charities down through the years, and just making sure you're involved in communities and using your profile to a positive in a positive way. And I suppose my journey into my late 20s, I had a few bad injuries, and there was a couple of injuries I had where I didn't know if I was ever going to get back and manage to play again. And I suppose I went through a time in my career where, I was very tunnel visioned on rugby was going to last forever. And that's, I gave it my all. But then when a few of those injuries happened, I suppose I had a bit of a reality check that, you need to start preparing for the life after rugby. Because if you have a long career, you play into your early 30s, but then you need to prepare for what's next. And I, for instance, have 2 young kids. I'm 36 now, but I have 2 young kids, and, the professional sporting chapter of my life is very much done. So preparing for me to come in and start working for someone like a multinational organization like Kirby Group took a lot of work, because I had to focus on completing my college degrees and a number of different qualifications I managed to get under my belt during a probably 4 or 5 year period, along with exposing myself to corporate environments. I went in and did several internships and work experiences in my last 4 or 5 years, and that would have been on my off day. In the last 2 or 3 years of my career, specifically on an off day, I'd go in, set up an internship to run for maybe 3-4 months with different companies and get exposure to different areas and functions and learn how things are done on the other side. Because it is, if you go in after just being involved in professional rugby and sport and expect that you're going to be able to flip the page and just move into that comfortably, it takes a lot of time. And, I suppose I'm still on that journey at the moment. I definitely feel like I'm embedded very well in Kirby Group, off the back of, being helped by some great people in here and using all their resources. But it takes a lot of time, and you need to have patience, because as a professional sports person, the trait that always sticks out to me, the characteristic that I probably had and a lot of my colleagues always had, was probably a lack of patience. I think things can happen when you get into the environment. Things can happen quite quickly. You're picked one week, you're not picked the next week. You score a winning try one week, you miss a crucial tackle to lose a game the next week, and it just moves on and on. So it's week by week. An awful lot can happen. Whereas with this new role I'm in right now, the lead time on projects, it can be 12 to 18 months. So there's a lot of different things that need to happen for success to get over the line. Whereas in my previous life, some things they happened a lot quicker. So working on that patience piece has definitely been a big one for me.
What I read a lot about, whether it's sport or in business now, is a lot about sort of trust the process. Trust the process, because sometimes the impatientness of entrepreneurs or people who are in sales or business development, or indeed that elite sports person, is just put me on the pitch, give me my boots, give me the ball, I'll score the try. But if everybody else doesn't come along with you, i.e. the process, then you can go very far as an individual, but you'll turn around to be nobody there to flip the ball to. Is there a process, that you see that you're now starting to understand and maybe even able to influence? Because I'm sure when the IRFU were setting out the whole process 15 years ago about professionalism of rugby and the academies and all this, it took a while, didn't it, for the talent to filter through? And there were those that maybe wanted it faster and quicker. But now I think it's fair to say that we're in the top echelons globally of that sport. Have you been able to you were sort of the guinea pig, were you? Were you part of that initial 15-year guinea pig, and you had to nearly trust the process a bit more, but now you can demonstrate that in a business? Because Kirby are great, they're wonderful, but the expansion of the digital infrastructure space and the expansion of the opportunities globally for the likes of the Kirby Group, it's still, you got to trust the process and believe that you're going to deliver on what you see. Is there anything you can tell people about sort of processes? And because I hear it spoken about all over now, trust the process. What does that mean to you? And is it Is that what we should be doing?
Yeah, I think you certainly need to trust the process in whatever culture you're in. Certainly, if it's not working, obviously you need to reassess. But from the environment I was in previously, firstly in the rugby environments, the initial process for me individually was working on what I could, taking feedback and working on different areas of where to get better. And then from there, when I got better in those areas, I put myself in a position to get picked on the teams. And then when you got picked in the teams, you had to grow out those work-ons and improve on them, because as you say, there's younger guys who are coming out of school and they're getting a bit of exposure. They're then trying to take your place. So there's high pressure to perform. There's high pressure to perform, not just in games, but in training sessions, outside of the environment when you're recovering. And the things have become so professional now with all the data collection around recovery and sleep and what you're putting into your body. All those little steps, individually and collectively, they make the difference at the end of the year when you come to those bigger games, and it's small margins to win or lose matches. And similarly, since I've moved in working with Kirby's, there's several different functions that you have to align with and collaborate with to make sure that you are doing right for the client and that we're delivering to the values that we've set out for ourselves. So yeah, trusting the process is crucial, I think, and specifically when you're in a successful organization, trusting it is key.
So we often hear, I'm in business quite some time, and sales and business development is one ilk of person, and delivery and engineers is another, and that's in the middle is sort of the demilitarization zone. I have to ask you, is there a different culture between the forwards gang and the backs gang in a rugby setting? I mean, tell me a bit about sort of the culture of it versus the culture of the backs, or is it all the one culture? You're still all trying to shuffle the little ball around the pitch and get it over the line.
I know there's still, like, from the rugby environment perspective, there is always a bit of a banter piece around forwards and backs, and even the front row club. I remember when we were playing the front row, which is like the props basically, and the hooker, the guys that lock down scrums for your team, which is a very important platform to launch your attacks off. But from a back's perspective, we're wondering, like, those lads just are in there hugging each other. What are they really doing? And they talk about it like it's a fine art, but they're key. And I think behind it all, there's huge appreciation from the back's perspective for what the forwards provide. And likewise, there's a common kind of respect for the backs for what we do as well, what we did as well. So, and then see, as you say at the start of the call there, the transferables are very, very clear once you've gone across really from, I think, professional sport into a corporate environment, particularly one as big as I've come into here, because all of the different functions are crucial to you're not always going to agree on everything, but you need to get on and understand the importance of each one, what they do. And it's a bit like operations and sales really. I see it, because from a sales side, we are probably looking out to what's coming in a year or two's time, whereas the operations guys are focusing on delivering what's right in front of their face for clients that can't be let down. So it's a bit of a that's kind of what, at the end of the day, there's always a respect level there, which is great.
Well, success often gives that too, doesn't it? When everybody sees the success and it's shared, and I see now with sport, even at the end of the World Cup there recently, there was about 50 people on the pitch celebrating with the 11 players. I thought that was very significant, from the backroom coaches to the boot men to everybody. There was a real collective sense of purpose. And that's what you're trying to instill, I guess, in a business environment, that the accounts clerks and the receptionists and everybody has a sense of purpose. So we've a couple of minutes left. It will be remiss of me not to ask you, what do you think your ex-colleagues are going to do in France at the end of the year?
I've got high hopes for them, Gary. I really do. I think that Ireland have their best chance to get to the latter stages of the competition. I think that we're currently ranked number one in the world, and justifiably so. I think the performances of the Irish team under the new coaching system with Andy Farrell have been phenomenal. And for anyone that wouldn't be aware on this call, Ireland have never got by a quarter-final stage in the World Cup. So I think on paper, an achievement, it would be a huge achievement to kind of make that milestone. But I don't think this playing group that's currently there, that coaching setup, would be satisfied with that. I think, they would, after beating the All Blacks a number of times over the last few years, beating South Africa, winning Six Nations titles, and going down to New Zealand specifically last summer and winning that 3-test series. They will be looking to go to a final, or maybe even to win this World Cup, and it's going to be phenomenally challenging, but I do believe they can do it. They're going to need a bit of luck. I think that every team needs a bit of luck to win a World Cup, but you do need a pool of talent, and we certainly have that, and we have the performances to back it up over the last few years.
Well, that's a really positive way to end the session. I thank you, Fergus, for joining us today. I must say I've picked up a lot. I find it incredible to think how humble you are, having done what you've done. And then, and I'll go back to it, a lot of people on this call won't understand, a professional sports person actually has to go back into another career, and that transition and that internship where you were a rugby player, you were with the 70,000 people, and yet you were taken on. I think that's an incredible tribute to have. I thank you for your time. Good luck with your new career. I know, because we're in touch on other stuff, you're already successful or being successful. But just don't pass the ball too often to that Aidan Cairns fella. He mightn't give it back to you. Just make sure he reciprocates. So Fergus, thanks so much.
Okay, thanks very much for having me on. I'll chat to you soon. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Cheers. Bye-bye.